Welcome to the Science for Sport podcast, where we dive into stories and insights that drive peak performance. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind the science of success. Here's your host, Richard Graves.
Hello and welcome to the Science for Sport podcast with me, Richard Graves. This week, we're entering the debate over whether a professional sports athlete should be allowed to employ and work with their own personal trainers, or should they stick to the schedules as laid out by the organisations who pay their wages? Well, my guest to discuss this topic is someone well versed in arguments on both sides of the fence. Daniel Booth is head of performance at Warner Brothers Discovery. He's also a performance coach at the business he's co-founded, MyoLab. There are few better people to discuss the merits both for and against this particular discussion. So let's hear from him now.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Well, Dan, welcome along to the Science for Sport podcast. Great to have you on to discuss this particular topic because you've sat on both sides of the fence over the course of your career. You've worked with Watford Football Club. You've been part of Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, of course, you're self-employed. You have your own performance-based business as well. And yet, over the last couple of months, the debate seems to have been inflamed over whether professional athletes should stick to schedules as laid out by the clubs they play for, or, as we've seen in certain individual cases, they have their own personal trainers, personal dietitians, in order to stay in the best possible shape and have longevity in their profession. Where do we start with this debate?
That's a good question. I've been doing this for over a decade now. As you say, I've worked for Watford Football Club. I've worked for Ealing Trailfinders. I've also worked on Olympic programs, sprint programs as well. And the beauty of that has been to allow me to be exposed to different ways of doing things. And I think that comes down to the fundamental issue at the very beginning is it's a clash of mismatched expectations and philosophies more than anything else. So if we use football, for example, from my experience, the people that work in football, the physios, the performance coaches, they are football people first and foremost. They're passionate about the game. A lot of them, quite frankly, could be technical coaches as well. But the problem that we have is we have an entire sport that essentially has blinkers on. And when I started at Watford, a lot of the comments that I got back from people when asked, why do we do this way and why do we do that way was that's how it's always been done, or that's how football does it. And for me, I'd already worked in, elite level sprinting and rugby. And that blew my mind. You have arguably one of the most profitable sports in the world. And they have all this technology, but they only focus internally. They don't look at what everybody else is doing. And so that's where the crux of the issue starts, because a lot of these external coaches that athletes and players are working with don't just work in football. They work across a breadth of sports. I know a coach, he works in everything from, MMA to badminton. And a lot of people will go, well, that doesn't work. It does. And I've had the results that I've had because I'm able to take certain aspects of every sport and blend it. So it's that's at the very beginning. It's a mismatch of those philosophies and the way we do things. As I say, the externals have got hopefully a breadth of experience in multiple sports, whereas your internal coaches a lot of the time are just focused solely on that sport, and that's where they butt heads.
Do you understand the frustration there? We'll take EFL Championship side Preston North End as an example, because they have a player on loan this season, a striker from Bournemouth, Daniel Jebison. He has an ankle injury right at the start of the season, which rules him out of action for a month. His manager, Paul Heckingbottom, had this to say, which really brought the whole topic to the fore again. He said, these guys, they work with the players and post all their work all over social media and want to promote their business and are happy to take the money. They don't give us any money back when they injure the players in their sessions. Close quotes. So the problem is that you've got a manager in a football club saying, we pay these guys wages. Yes, he's been trying to better himself, and all power to the player for that, but they've got injured, and suddenly we have the liability, and the personal trainer or physician, whoever it might be, doesn't. I'd guess the individual concerned, and much like you've just laid out there, will say, well, hang on a minute. Times have moved on. Sport is now a business, and the prize asset for any individual athlete is their body, and they're trying to keep themselves in the best possible shape. I mean, after all, Cristiano Ronaldo's in his 40s, still playing international football. As we've said before, Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls, played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until he was 45 in the NFL at an elite level. So it stands to reason, doesn't it, that athletes look at their careers now and the longevity. They want to do all they can, but their employers are saying, well, hang on a minute. We pay your wages here, and if you get injured and you're not available, it's us that suffer.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand where Paul's coming from. I mean, my understanding of that particular athlete and trainer was it was a freak accident that could have happened in a club environment. You know, had I been sitting opposite Paul, I would have said, well, if I went down the route of being paid for every time a player was injured when another coach is looking after him, I'd be a millionaire by now. Because I can't count on both hands the amount of times that a player has been in tactical training, has become injured, and then it's like, well, how are you going to fix them? I need him for next week. And he's sort of kind of forgetting that, it's not on this person or that person. It's a case of, okay, the problem's happened. How do we go back fixing this as quickly as possible? Let's get all the facts. Let's get all the details. Let's keep it internal. Let's find out from the trainer and the coach exactly what happened. Let's speak to the player and let's see, yes, that coach could turn around and go, absolutely, the team can deal with it. It will stay as an internal thing. Here's all the information and all his training data from the past 6 months, and that's a really collaborative way of going about it. But also, is it really a Preston problem? Their players on loan from Bournemouth. So it's actually a Bournemouth problem and it's a Bournemouth asset. So, the reason he's, for the want of a better word, getting his knickers in a twist is because he'll have Bournemouth breathing down his neck, going, well, we've loaned you a player. That's an asset of ours. And you've allowed him to train with an external coach. And now he's injured. Like, there could be fees attached to that Preston are going to have to pay Bournemouth. So it's a big political thing on the back end. But the poor old external coach, because he has no communication with the team, either team probably, isn't aware of this. So he doesn't know who his master is. All he deals with is the athlete in front of him. And it's a really, really tricky situation to be in. But you're right. More and more athletes now are seeking external help. And that is for the sole reason that they want to push themselves further than they ever have. And in sports like football, we're seeing at the academy level that, on a training day, once they hit their GPS numbers, they're pulled off the field. Training stops for that person. So you're never, ever overloading them to make them better. You're always keeping them on the safe side. Now, high performance is all about teetering on that edge, that border of make or break. At least that's how I've seen it, and that's how I've always tried to go about it, because that's the only way you're going to ever make these people world class and the best, and take them to the best of their abilities. You can talk about people like Tom Brady, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. All these guys had their own trainer that solely looked after them. LeBron had Mike Mancias, who he met when he joined the Cavaliers. He took a liking to him straight away. He then said, you know what? I like you that much. You're my guy now. Like, I don't care about anything else. I don't care what else the club can offer me. You're my guy because you understand me and my body. Same with Tom Brady. He did exactly the same things. Met his trainer when he first started at the Patriots, said to the Patriots, I'm going to buy him from you. He's not mine because he's my guy. He's who looks after my programming. Because these people want somebody that is in tune with them, their lifestyle, the way that they play, their injury history, and ultimately who understands them as an individual. Yes, sport is a business, but it's people that you're dealing with, and these people have feelings and emotions that they either want stroked or pushed aside. And it's when you're working with a one-on-one coach who you've been dealing with for the last 6 months, 12 months, they know. I mean, I've got clients. I can walk into a room and I instantly know what kind of mood they're in, what they need from me. Have I got to completely flip the training on its head for today based on what I'm seeing in front of me? You don't get that when you go into a team setting because you have 20, 30 guys coming at you all at the same time, all laughing and joking. And it's very, very easy, through nobody's fault, mind you, that there might be a player sitting in the corner avoiding talking to anybody. Is he going to get the best out of that training that day? Probably not, because he's going to go under the radar, or one of the other coaches is going to spot it and go, oh, look, he's got the ump today, let's leave him alone. If you've got a one-to-one coach, you avoid that. But there needs to be collaboration. That's the only way it's going to work. And, especially teams like Preston, they should see it as a real opportunity because they're on limited budgets. The Championship, the budgets are nowhere near the Premiership. So you might have two strength and conditioning coaches, a couple of physios. If you've got six of your guys that are working with individual coaches or individual physios, you can use that as an extension of your performance and medical team. And by doing that and having that collaboration there, you know that that one individual is looked after. And all you have to do is read the weekly email or the daily email or the daily text, however you want to do it. And you've got a full breakdown straight from the horse's mouth, not via the player, because the player will tell you what you want to hear. That gives you a breakdown and an understanding of that individual on that day. Now, is that not what we need as coaches and practitioners every day?
Well, there's a couple of things I want to address there. First of all is, as far as Daniel Jebuson's contract goes, we're not privy to the details of that, but it's fair to surmise there will be provision in case of an injury incident. The second thing was that word communication you mentioned, because whilst it's fantastic that a player is looking after himself and he's working with a personal trainer, quite often it seems to me in a lot of cases we're hearing about, and you mentioned it there isn't always the open lines of communication between the club and the personal trainer. Now, if a player's played 90 minutes in a football match, or they've had a particularly intense training session on any given day, then is this where the problem comes? Because you then go and say, I want to do an extra half an hour with my personal trainer. They perhaps aren't privy to all the information from the last 24 hours. Is that where we start locking horns and potentially things can break down?
The short answer is yes. And by what I'm going to say next, I'm going to lose a lot of friends. But it needs to be said. So, this very topic is about collaboration between two different parties. Now, having worked in football in the UK, I can assure you the FA are just as difficult when it gets to players playing at international level. This is an argument that is happening week in, week out when players leave and come back from international camps. Because the FA in England don't necessarily care, especially around a tournament, what the club needs. So if I, as a club, advise that my player shouldn't see any more than 40 minutes on the pitch because of the last 2 months worth of club football and any injuries they might be dealing with, I'd put that month's salary on the fact that England are going to go, well, we need them for 65 minutes and they're going to play 65 minutes and you can mop up the mess at the other end. and that's just fact. So and a lot of people that work at the FA, I'm sure, would be quick to jump on the fact of, oh, no, we collaborate really, really well with our clubs and this, that, and the other. I would argue otherwise. You know, because ultimately everybody at that level is out for their own performance. England want that player to perform well for them. The club want them to perform well for them also. The difference is the club have got to use that player for a hell of a lot longer than the international side,
Well,
anyways.
okay then. Given that argument, is this where perhaps rugby and cricket have a slight advantage because we have the central contracts with the ECB, for example, and they are across all the time the workload of the players that are centrally contracted. They liaise with the clubs, and everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet. Is that where we need to go with football?
Yes, and we the rugby union in the UK has a fantastic setup for the relationship between international level and club rugby, to the point of even at entry level academy setups, England staff will come in, and any players that are on that international timeline that may potentially play for under 21s, under 18s rugby, England will come in and sit down with you face to face and walk you through their performance pathway and go, this is what we need at this time of year. This is what we need at this time of year. This is what we need at this time of year. How does that currently match up with the way that you're doing things? And if it doesn't match up, how do we collaborate together to make sure it does match up so that we get the best for this player, not only for performance, but also for the longevity of their career? And unfortunately, it's 2025 now, and the English Football League is still treating it as if it's back in the 90s, and it's just not. It's players have evolved, but it seems that clubs aren't.
Well, the problem you've got, of course, is that I'm quite sure clubs will argue with. For example, we in the past week we've just seen the closing of the summer transfer window, and English clubs, I think, combined had spent something in excess of £3 billion on transfers. It's a mind-boggling amount of money, but it's money that's been spent by the clubs. So perhaps understandably, they're going to turn around and say, well, hang on, you talk about central contracts. Are the Football Association going to stump up the cash for these players? Well, no, because they don't have that type of money. So the clubs then, as I say, will understandably argue that they really should hold sway in how players are treated. So it's a bit of an impasse, isn't it? I don't see how you can really get past this.
It is, and this is again where the external coaches come into play, because I won't talk names or contracts or anything like that, but I'm currently written into three Premiership rugby players' contracts. Now, two of them play at the international level. Um, Nobody knows I'm written into their contracts. Only them and the club. That's it. And then obviously the international sides. But the idea is that they give me a breakdown of their years, and then I then create their programming off the back of that, based on what both parties need. And then I collaborate throughout the year with the physios from the club, the physios from the international side, the S&C staff from both sides. And we have a constant conversation around what that player needs, how they're looking day to day, and all this sort of thing. And actually, what it does is it brings in that central person that is, I guess, I mean, it's like my role day to day. I'm that central person that everybody feeds information into. I make sense of it all and then shoot it out the other side and try and make everybody as happy as possible. Now, that does mean having some tough, honest conversations with both sides a lot of the time, and also the player. But ultimately, the player is at the forefront of everything we do or we try to do. Sometimes they've got to take some hard losses, and they've got to do a bit of extra conditioning when they don't want to do it. But in the long run, they understand that it saves them time and energy. But from doing that with the parties that I've worked with, we found that the community we actually over communicate. And it's every injury, every ill feeling that they've picked up on at training gets fed through into this system, and then we make a decision of whether it's going to impact that player or not, and who it's more importantly who it's going to impact. And I think that's where external coaches can really play a part, especially in football, because they're that external voice that's going, hang on, I'm getting all this information from both sides. I've dissected it, digested it. Here's what I think. Here's my opinion, but unbiased based off what both parties are saying. And ultimately, that I think that is what you need. You need that unbiased person that can pull the trigger and go, this is the direction we're going to take based on what the player needs, not based off what you need or what you need. But taking those into consideration. And it's a really, I mean, it's a really difficult job to do. Um, at every level, even my current level, um, I am people's best friends and worst enemies all on the same day, depending on the answers that I give them to the questions that they ask me. And do you have to, at the club level, you know, it's a case of, your head of medical might come in on a Monday morning and go, right, okay, these 4 players are out because they're injured. And it's me sitting there going, are they out for the week though?
Again, though, and old school managers, coaches will say, well, back in my day, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, Dan, back in my day, you might be carrying a knock. Ultimately, game on the line, you'd go up to the individual concerned and say, are you good to go? Do you want in the game? And that's how decisions would be made. Um, it, it's a I keep coming back to it's a fine balancing act. Sport isn't just sport anymore. It's a business. The amount of money involved is mind-blowing in many cases. So how do we move on from here? Because quite clearly it's not tenable to, in the current day and age, to have managers and coaches saying there'll be no outside influence. We saw the Dallas Cowboys at this summer, and this is a very much out of the ordinary instance with their star cornerback, Trayvon Diggs. He was rehabbing a knee injury with physicians in Florida. They wanted him back at the team facility, and it was written into his contracts that he had to spend X amount of time there. He didn't, so they fined him $500,000. Now, that took everybody by surprise. As I say, I think that's more of an outlier these days. How do we evolve to the point where we now accept that there are personal physicians as well as club teams, and the two have to live side by side?
I mean, we sort of go back to those big time superstars that we spoke about before. I mean, anybody that follows the NFL will know about the quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Um, Patrick has a trainer called Bobby Stroop or Stroop, depending on how you say it. And he's been working with him since the before the draft. Um, they got introduced. He liked the way that Bobby approached training and his body and all this kind of stuff. And the Bobby takes a very different approach to Patrick's body from what I've seen and heard and read, to what most S&C coaches would. And I think they are a shining example of how external and club can work together. So, for example, in the off season, this is all done from research, by the way, and talking. I'm very lucky. I know a couple of people at the team, so I've been able to ask staff. But in the off season, Mahomes will train with Bobby 5 days a week. Anywhere from 4 hours to 90 minutes. You know, from season start, that's when he pulls back. The team come in, they take over,
So
and
it's a collaboration.
yeah, so it's a collaboration. So the trainer goes, here's everything we've been doing in the preseason. These are all his numbers. This is where his body's at. Team goes, thank you very much. We'll take that on. Here's the current program that he's going to be doing with us. Can we please have your input based on what you've been doing in preseason and what you'll be doing throughout the season? But Bobby's time with Patrick Mahomes goes from 5 days a week to typically 10 to 12 hours per week. But the difference is This isn't, okay, you've been pounded in games, you've been pounded in the weight room, we're going to pound you some more. It's then a case of the sessions will fall the day after a game, 2 days before a game, and they are regenerative sessions. So it's more about recovery, mobility, working on specific things that Patrick needs to get his body right before or after a game. We all know how, crazy the NFL is. Some of the hits they take are like getting hit by freight trains. Let's be honest. So each individual has their own way of recovering from that. And Patrick's is all about movement. And that's where, his trainer Bobby comes into his own. And he specializes in these unconventional, movement techniques that involve gymnastics and javelin throwing and, martial arts exercises and all these sorts of specific things that Patrick's obviously been exposed to in the early days and then bought into. And he feels that it puts his body in the right place. So then they then feed that all back to the team, not via the athlete. It's trainer to trainer, straight switch. This is what we've been doing over the last 24 hours, 48 hours. When he landed from Dallas the other day, this is exactly what we did post flight. And then everybody's singing off the same song sheet. And that shows in Patrick's, performances. I mean, people that don't understand the NFL and are pro football will go, "Oh, but it's totally different." Patrick Mahomes signed a 10-year, $450 million contract. It's one of the most significant contracts in the NFL. They're not taking this lightly, but they're doing it in a forward-thinking way that, they're going, we've got this asset that is worth, we're paying this much money. We need him to be in the best shape possible. How do we get there? He's got a trainer that he likes. Okay, we're not going to argue with that. But let's work with him as opposed to against him. And I think, especially in the UK, that's where we go wrong. It's my way or the highway. And if you don't like it, get off the bus. And we need to become more open-minded. But on the flip side of this, we also need to improve the caliber of external coaches. And this is sort of where I turn the tide on the external coaches, because a lot of them are younger. I mean, I'm only 34, but class myself as an old man now,
There are
unfortunately.
no grey hairs there just yet, Dan.
I've had them all cut out, that's why. Thanks to my barber. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys are too focused on the social media side of things. And this is what kills me. When I came into the industry, the people that I worked for, the coaches that I learned from, always said, those who need to know. If you need a guy, you know who to go to in your industry or in sport. It's very much like the film and TV industry. If somebody needs you or somebody that has your talents, they'll find you because they know who you are. And everybody is worried about being a brand and, oh, my personal brand. And, I have to build a business and all this sort of stuff. So I'm going to throw all this stuff out on social media. No, you don't. I get it. I really do. You think by getting those eyes on, people are going to buy into you more players are going to see you. I have not once ever mentioned any athlete or individual that I've ever worked with on social media, because I know if I train one guy, he gets good results, he's going to go back to the locker room and start talking about it. Or his teammates or her teammates are going to go, damn, you got good in the off season. What did you do differently? Oh, I trained with this guy. Before you know it, you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people coming to you going, I want to train with you. So they need to go down that approach as opposed to posted on social media to try and build their brand and, get known. Why do you need to be known? You're a trainer. We're not the superstars. And this is what is important to remember. We are here to facilitate the natural greatness of these athletes. Period. I don't want to
And with
be.
all successful businesses, it's often said, isn't it? There's no substitute for word of mouth, and that's certainly the case here. Look, Dan, really appreciated your time. Half an hour's flown by, and I'm pretty confident that this is a debate which isn't going to go away anytime soon, certainly in the UK. So it may be one that if you've got time, we could well revisit here on the Science for Sport podcast. For those that are interested in what you've got to say on this episode, we've just said you don't need to build your own brand on social media, but where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram. If you want to see pictures of me and my son and my family, it's Boothie_lab. I don't throw up any content of me training anybody. I do a little bit of self-promotion on there, but yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn, and that's just Daniel Booth. You'll be able to find me, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions, get any feedback anytime. So yeah, please reach out.
Fantastic. Really appreciate your time for this episode. And we'll certainly keep in touch and hopefully revisit it again if I can put my teeth in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Many thanks to Dan for joining me on this week's episode and discussing the merits, both pros and cons, of having a personal trainer as a professional sports athlete. And I'm quite sure you'll have your own thoughts on this discussion as well. If you enjoyed what he had to say and want to find out more, then you can do so by visiting our website, www.scienceforsport.com. And if you have, like me, enjoyed this particular debate and episode, please do feel free to share it with a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. As always, remember, the more downloads we get for an episode, the easier it then becomes for us to attract our next guest or a professional at the cutting edge of their field onto the show. Well, that's just about all for this edition. Thank you once again for listening, and I look forward to the next time you can join me on the Science for Sport podcast.
Subscribe to the Science for Sport podcast now, wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more insights, resources, and to join the Academy, visit scienceforsport.com and connect with us on social media by searching for @ScienceForSport. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.